Darren Kimura is a Japanese-American entrepreneur who grew up in Hawaii and has founded several companies, all in the business of developing improved methods of clean energy using solar power. His companies do business on an international level. In fact, he just signed a deal to provide energy technology to China. Today, I had the chance to talk with Mr. Kimura to learn about the innovative products his companies have developed and to find out what has made him successful. Thank you, Mr. Kimura, for taking time out of your day today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You call yourself an entrepreneur. What does that mean to you?
You know, I look at myself as being an energy entrepreneur. And what that means is what I'm trying to do in my career is basically solve some of the most fundamental problems that we have in energy today. And I see those problems in really three distinct buckets. One which I would call energy efficiency, one which I call energy generation, and one which I call energy transportation. And what I've done over my 20-year career is build businesses in each of those three different buckets. But the ones that are the biggest include Energy Industries, which is the largest US private company doing energy efficiency work today. And what they do is they go into buildings and they try to make the buildings more energy efficient. And they can use the savings that the customers would receive to pay us for our services. That company is currently an international company. We have offices in Asia, but we've got offices all throughout the West Coast as well. And Sopogy, which is the solar concentrating technology company where we're selling our products globally. We have projects currently going on in the Middle East, Spain, India, in Papua New Guinea, as well as the United States and Hawaii. We have another technology company which is called Keahole that builds big utility scale power projects. And we do that with green technology, whether it's wind or solar photovoltaic or concentrating solar power. Those are the ones that are the biggest and we control. We've got other companies that we created and sold off as well. Some which are now with bigger companies, with utilities, and you know they're all in of themselves doing pretty well today.
You said one of your companies is called Sopogy. What does that stand for?
Sopogy is a word that we made up. It actually comes from three different words: solar, power, technology. So Sopogy's technologies are doing big projects, utility scale size power projects. What we do is called concentrating solar power. And the concept of concentrating solar power is actually not new at all. People claim that Archimedes, even back in those days, used mirrors to try and defend the ports by taking sunlight in this curved mirror and aiming that light on the sail of incoming ships. And as a result, they would burn the ships. So the whole idea of concentrating energy is not new. We call it CSP, concentrating solar power. And in this sector, all the technologies use some form of reflector, a mirror, to basically intensify the energy of the sun. And by doing that, you get more energy. You capture more of the spectrum, if you will, the light and everything that's contained in that, the heat, the thermal aspects from the sun. So it's a much more efficient way to generate energy. But I think, and that's point one about CSP that really makes it unique. But point two, that's probably the most important thing, and the thing that really caught my eye when we started our technology development, was that you can capture that thermal energy and store it. And storage is absolutely critical in energy, because the thing about renewable energy, whether it's wind, sun, is if the resource stops, for example, the wind, if the wind stops, you don't generate any more energy. So if your house was on wind all the time, your lights would be going on and off all day long, and that's not good. You wouldn't be productive. In the case of thermal energy, with CSP, concentrating solar power, and our mirrors, we take the mirrors, aim it at the sun, concentrate the heat basically from the sun into a pipe, and we take that heat, put it into a liquid, and we store that liquid in a big thermos. And think of a number of big thermoses, kind of like hot tea in a container. You know, you pour it up, you cover it, drive around, drive to school or whatever it is, and then, you know, when you want some of it, you take off the top and you pour it on and it's still steamy. So it's stored energy. So that allows you to be able to capture the sun energy, but save it for when you need it later.
For CSP, what's the final product? Do you get energy, or is it heat or some other form of energy?
Yep. All CSP technologies effectively produce heat, and they use that heat to produce something that's usable energy. So you could use that heat, for example, to run a turbine to create power. You could use that heat to drive what's called an absorption chiller, which is an air conditioning unit that runs only on heat. You can use that heat, for example, in an industrial facility, and use it for steam. In the case of power, the power market, most of the time, what's going on is you will deploy a large field of solar collectors, which will produce energy, and that energy will go into the utility grid. So very, very rarely will you have energy that goes into your house or to an industrial facility. It's almost always the case where the power being deployed goes into the grid, the power system, the utility. Now, in absorption cooling, you can actually have a bunch of solar collectors on your rooftop, like a Walmart, for example, connected up with this device, and the air conditioning will go into that retail store. So in that sense, the customer is the retailer. So it's a very diverse application. It's not specifically limited to producing power. And that's one of the attractive aspects of CSP as well.
How is using solar energy better than using traditional fuel sources such as coal and oil?
Conventional forms of power generation are needed in no matter what clean energy scenario you look at. And there's a number of ways we get our energy today. As you mentioned, coal, which is where we take a resource mined from the earth and we burn it. And what happens there is, coal is actually trapped carbon dioxide, CO2, and when we burn it, we release it back into the atmosphere. And of course, one of the biggest contributors to global climate change is an increased amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. So the more coal we burn, the more we release CO2. The more we release CO2, the hotter the earth becomes. But I think secondly, and maybe most importantly, is what I would call energy security. The problem with coal, the problem with oil, is that the problem with natural gas in some cases is that we get it from someplace else. And as a result, we're always tied to that someplace else, whether it be oil from the Middle East or natural gas, which comes out of Indonesia or Malaysia. We get it from someplace else. So that's a challenge. We are addicted to that. When we create energy using natural resources that we have here in the Southwest United States, it's some of the most sunlight-rich areas in the entire world. When we use that for energy, we make ourselves better. We make ourselves more energy secure. And that's something that we must strive forward towards. We need to take a look at how we can be more long-term, more sustainable.
So in the future, what percentage of the energy we use will come from clean sources?
We only have about 1% of our energy resource coming from clean energy. I'm optimistic. I think we can maybe get up to 50% in my lifetime of clean energy. And that would mean, worldwide deployment of wind farms and solar farms. It would mean sustainable crops that can be used to create biodiesel for both power generation and also in our vehicles, in our cars. And I think that shift will make us significantly more economically secure, but also it'll create a tremendous amount of new jobs, and it'll create those jobs in our local cities and our local economies where we need them.
So today, I know we use coal and oil because they're cheap. Why would we switch to solar if it's cheaper to keep doing what we have today?
Yeah, I think that argument made a lot of sense 10 years ago, where the cost of energy, conventional energy, whether it be nuclear or natural gas or coal, was so much cheaper than the price of energy generated from a renewable energy technology. And in that last 10 years, we've been able to close that gap. Solar technologies have become commoditized. Price points have dropped significantly. And what we're going to continue to see is that. We're going to see new technologies come online, technologies that are much more efficient but also cost less, and which will get us to the point of grid parity. Now, grid parity is basically the cost of energy generated from a renewable energy technology against the cost of energy being generated from an incumbent like coal. That spread used to be very big 10 years ago. What I'm saying is that today we're just a little bit offset. We're probably just maybe 10 or 15% offset of being at parity. And in some parts of the country, for example, Hawaii comes to mind, where I'm from, we're actually the other way around. The oil-based economy which we have is more expensive today than the renewable energy economy that we have. And that's an example and a trend that you're going to begin to see across the country. Now, what's really going on here? Why aren't we there yet? The fact of the matter is, coal and other industries have been incentivized for decades, centuries. Mining is incentivized. The chemicals that go into coal refinement is incentivized. And these are all done by taxpayer dollars today. And the challenge there is it artificially keeps the price of coal low. And as a result, the price of energy that comes out from burning coal is low as well. And that's well understood, that's well appreciated. And as a result, we now begin to see discussions around policies to try and equalize that. For example, what's called a carbon tax. California just initiated their carbon tax a couple days ago, actually. And you're beginning to hear discussions through the halls of Congress now for a national policy. That will give an additional economic driver to the cost of renewable energy. So no longer will it just be the cost of generation, it'll also now include the offsetting cost of carbon. So that'll bump up the cost of energy being generated from coal, and it'll keep the price of energy generated from solar about the same, and it'll probably get us to parity, if not even beyond. So that is a trend that's coming. We've seen it. We can track the data points on it. We understand where we're going. But also know that I think there's a significant opportunity for innovation in this sector. And that, I think, is a message to all the entrepreneurs out there, is that your idea in this sector can mean a lot. And what I mean by that is, if you think about all the major industries out there today, you look at cars, for example. If you wanted to create a new car, it's going to be tough to do. There's a number of mega companies out there, multi-billion-dollar companies out there globally making these products today. So a new idea from a college student may not go all that far. That is not the case in clean energy today. We have no incumbents. We have no conglomerates in the sector today. Everything we have here is new. And that, I think, provides a tremendous amount of opportunity to inventors, entrepreneurs, to come into the space and really change the game. It's kind of like the internet was before Yahoo, before Google, before these big Amazon and big companies. That's where we are in the clean energy race now.
So how did you get into this field?
My family comes from Hawaii. I'm the fourth generation of Japanese immigrants, and my great-great-grandparents worked in the plantations, as is my grandparents. My parents were contractors, and what we did in our family business is we were doing electrical work. So we were building houses, hotels. What really kind of tipped the scale for me, though, was as I was growing up, we would have a lot of power problems. We had blackouts constantly, and to the point where the utility would actually tell us, hey, your town, the town I'm from is called Hilo, your town Hilo is going to be blacked out between 2 to 6. And the next town over, you'll be blacked out from 6 to 10. And here I was, we were building some of the most state-of-the-art technology. We were building telescopes that were seeing, millions of light years out into space. And yet we couldn't keep the lights on at home. And that was absurd to me. So when I went to college, I wanted to figure out a solution to that problem. How do you go about, making what you have more efficient, use less? And that's what got me started on this path. So I began doing work with the Environmental Protection Agency as an intern, helping them to launch a program called the Energy Star Program. And today the Energy Star Program is pretty well known. You can see labels on things like washing machines and TVs. And when you see that label, you know that that device is energy efficient. Well, back in the early 90s, the program was just an idea. It was an idea that we could come up with a benchmark for an appliance or a building, similar to miles per gallon for your car. So the EPA came up with the whole idea of miles per gallon for your car. It's the standard that we use today when we're even buying cars. What's your miles per gallon? If it's over 30, then that's good. If it's under 30, not so good. None of that existed for appliances or buildings back then. So the whole idea was to create that for energy. And as I got into it in the early days, I just fell in love with it. And I could see the work that we did had so much meaning to our generation, but it would be impact for generations to come. And I made it my choice at that time to just do that. Just be focused on energy, try to solve problems that are, in the energy field. How do you go about making your home use less? And that's good for the environment because you're not burning as much coal, and as a result, you're not putting as much CO2 in the air. But also the homeowner wins because they're not spending as much for their bill. And that made me feel good, and it made our customers feel good, and that was just enough incentive to keep going.
So if we could interview your elementary school teachers, what would they say you were like as a young boy that would lead them to think that you'd be a successful entrepreneur?
They would say nothing today. They would remember that when I was in school, I was the student that was always kept after school to do, detention. I was the student that they would put up on the whiteboard to, demonstrate that I did my homework when I never did. So they would, use that as a tool to embarrass me in hopes that I would study, but I would never really do that either. I back then was a very average student. For the most part, not great in school, not really exceptional in my classes. Pretty average grades, C's and B's, but nothing spectacular. Pretty disengaged from school, generally speaking. So they will remember me because I was always that kid, that kid who was always doing bad. But frankly, I mean, that was the way it was. And that's, what led me to become the person I am today.
So today it seems like you have a very strong drive. What changed since elementary school?
I think I was always motivated. Motivated by different things, though. Back in school, in those elementary school days, my motivation was to just do anything but school. But I think really what tipped for me, if you will, is finding something that I absolutely love to do. And once I find that, it's very difficult for me to do anything else. So back in those days, I loved to surf. I'm from Hawaii. And I got really good at it to the point where I, used to get free shirts as a sponsored surfer, and that's what I wanted to do. And I remember back in the day, my parents would tell me, well, you'll never make a living doing surfing. And they were right. But back then, I saw nothing else but surfing. It was life. And when I got older and I discovered this path that I'm on today of clean energy, building global solutions to solve problems, I love it. I'm absolutely passionate about it. I believe in the work that I do and we do as a company. And it keeps me going every day. And I love it so much to the extent that, again, similar to my surfing analogy, I see nothing else. And as a result, it just keeps me on path. And I know the problems. I know how real they are. I know, or I speculate when they're, going to become mega problems. And I want to be a part of the solution to that.
How did your parents influence you?
I was lucky with great parents. These are parents that are super optimistic. They encourage me in anything I do. And I think they're the reasons why I was able to become a real entrepreneur. So when I said, hey, I have an idea, the answer isn't, well, tell me more about it. Let's go study it. The answer was, go do it. Try it. You never know until you try. And, I think because of that, I was able to become who I am today. They still support me. Even now, 20 years later, I have an idea. I'll go home and talk to them, and my mom will say, absolutely, go try it. She kept me on course. I remember, in fact, as I'm going through this, one of my very, very first experiences as an entrepreneur and first experiences with failure was with a really awful sales call that I made. And at the time, I was selling an energy service. So I went into a bank, and I cold called them and got the chance to meet with the president. And the president was irritated because I was very persistent. So she would let me present my company case to her, and I was really bad. I was late to the meeting, talked very fast, didn't really have much to say. And she kicked me out. I mean, like literally kicked me out of her office. And I thought at that, that was like the low point of my career. I thought I was done. And I remember going home and telling my mom, I called her up and I said, Mom, I'm done. I tried the business thing. It didn't work. I won't do it again. The failure was just horrible. I'm so embarrassed. And she, said, hey, wait a minute. Let's not give up so easily. Let's think about this. You know, maybe there's something you can do to fix what you did. Think about it. And I did. You know, I talked to my friends, I talked to other business people that I knew, and they all had good suggestions. And I did. I incorporated those suggestions. I got better, and eventually had the chance to go back and see the bank president again. So the second time I did, it went very well. You know, I incorporated a lot of the things: brush my hair, iron my shirt, you know, other things that cut my hair. You know, other things that I didn't think were so important back then. I incorporated all of those things, and that bank president became my best customer, and that relationship allowed me to grow that business. You know, probably about 200 or 300% year over year for the next 2 or 3 years, and it was all because of my mom.
Can you say something about your background as being a Japanese American?
Yeah, you know, so I'm from Hawaii. I grew up with a plantation mentality. In Hawaii, a lot of the immigrants there came from Japan to work in the sugarcane fields. So, you know, the plantation mentality was really interesting because it really, we were very firmly situated in values, you know, and trust and integrity and honesty. Because in a small community, you have to have that. You know, you only have the other people in the camp to rely on. And if you weren't going to make it as a unit, you would all die, you know. So those values, I think, which were brought over from Japan, remain with me today in business. You know, we do our absolute best to, you know, stand behind our word. You know, we are a value-driven company in all of the companies that we operate. You know, I think there's a lot to be said about some of those characteristics which are oftentimes lost in business today, which I think has led themselves to us being successful.
Has being Japanese American affected your innovations and business ventures?
Absolutely has, both positive and negative. You know, on the negative side, you know, when we look towards our advisors, towards our mentors, towards our peers as being Asian American, you know, we come from a very risk-averse society. And this is one where, you know, innovations, change is not generally, you know, accepted, adopted. And it's, you know, almost negative. So when, in my case, when I've come up with new ideas, new ventures, we've taken them out to our advisors, our mentors, our peers. A lot of times it's been, no, I don't think you can do this, or no, I don't think it'll work, or no, I won't invest in that kind of idea, or it's too much of a challenge. So that's the negative. But I think, you know, knowing the nature of being risk adverse, knowing the nature of being conservative, and being able to persevere through that, being able to break through that, is where the positive lies and the real message. And the message is, you know, when you're able to convince those very, you know, opposite end conservative types to say, yes, I get it. Yes, you've done enough in your idea to purge the risk or to convince me otherwise, then you have a hit, because you've gone through, you know, deeper levels of challenge than some of the other companies that may come from different cultures or societies had to. And as a result, I think you become part of the cream of the crop.
How do you measure success?
You know, success is a tough one to just put a definition around. You know, from my standpoint, I would like to have a legacy where behind that, we have employed thousands of employees around the world. We've created great jobs, higher than average wage paying jobs that are global. I want to create businesses that will go on after me, without me, for generations, that have instilled in their DNA the capability to survive the changing times, that will always be, you know, at the cutting edge. And I want to create businesses that solve problems. I'm not here or interested to create, you know, a Me Too, you know, nice thing to have, which makes your life, you know, more elegant. That's not me. I want to go out there and figure out the biggest problems in energy today, and I want my companies to challenge themselves to solve them. And I think if we can achieve these things, then from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think we've achieved success.
What is your message to young people today?
I think you, as a viewer of this, should know that what's come before you should become, you know, your barometer, your marker to beat. That what's available in the future is so much grander, so much bigger. The ideas to come, your ideas that you're cultivating now, the opportunities, the jobs you're going to create, the companies you're going to build, those are in your minds today. And the only limitation is you. So what you need to know is that as you watch these, these vignettes here, that, this is the past. And aspire to get to that level, yes, but aspire to beat them, beat me. My challenge, if anything else, is, know what I've done, know my challenge, know my goal. Go out there and solve clean energy problems. Know my goal to employ thousands of employees and beat that. Do it better, do it faster than me. You can. Employ more. Do whatever it is you're going to do, but bigger and better than me. Think big. You're only limited by your imagination. Walt Disney believed it, and the empire that he created out of his simple dream is massive, probably something beyond what he even thought would be accomplished at one point in time. Same here, and particularly in the green energy field, the opportunities today are incredibly large, and they're entrepreneurs that are going to take those ideas forward, those companies, build those companies to go forward, are you. So know that that is your challenge in your generation as you go forward. And, tell your story. Tell your story to the world so the generation after that knows where they should be aiming and what they need to be too.
Thank you very much for your time today. I had a good time talking to you.
I had a great time as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Talking with Darren Kimura was inspiring for me, especially his encouragement for me to take risks. He showed me that I don't have to be the best student in my class to make a difference in the world, but rather I should follow my dreams and my passion.